Hello everyone. Welcome to Dead Time Stories. I know many of you enjoy listening to these videos as you fall asleep. So before you drift off, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where in the world you're tuning in from. And if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Alright, now let's get comfortable, relax, and dive into these true creepy stories. Story 1. The Blue Door. Every summer, the Santiago family returned to the lake house. Nestled in a remote corner of Michigan's Upper Peninsula, the house was old, creaking wood, sun-warped siding, windows that groaned when the wind rose. But it sat on its own private inlet, surrounded by thick forest and silence so pure it hummed in the ears. To 17-year-old Elena Santiago, the lake house had always felt strange, like it remembered more than it should. Her parents loved it. Her older brother, Miguel, found it peaceful. But Elena had never shaken the feeling that something watched her there, something just out of reach. This summer, it was just her and Miguel. Their parents were in Spain for an extended work trip. Miguel, freshly 19 and home from his first year of college, was entrusted with watching the house and his sister. "We'll fish, eat garbage food, and sleep till noon," Miguel promised with a grin as they unpacked. "Sounds thrilling," Elena replied, dragging her duffel up the stairs. The house was musty but otherwise unchanged. Same crooked floorboards, same dust-furred corners. Miguel took the master room downstairs, and Elena took her usual room upstairs, across from the locked storage closet. It had always been locked. Always. Until the second night, when Elena woke at 2:13 a.m. to the sound of something soft tapping against the wall. She sat up, blinking in the dark. Her room was lit only by moonlight. The tapping was rhythmic. Careful. It was coming from across the hall. She stepped out, the wood cold beneath her feet. The hallway stretched longer than she remembered. And the door, the closet door, was open. A crack. Just a crack. Enough to see the corner of something behind it. Something blue. Elena frowned. That door had been locked her entire life. She approached it slowly, heart rising into her throat. Inside was a short hallway she'd never seen before. Rough wood walls. A faint, cold breeze coming from deeper in. At the end of the new hallway was a blue door. She didn't touch it. She just stared at it. And the door, impossibly, breathed. Elena backed away from the crack, her breath hitching. The air spilling from the hidden hallway was too cold, too still. Like the inside of a walk-in freezer, but dry. Clean. The kind of air that didn't belong in the natural world. She closed the closet door and turned the old brass handle. It locked with a click. Still trembling, she returned to her room, climbed beneath the covers, and stared at the ceiling until morning, pretending nothing had happened. Miguel was in the kitchen when she came down, frying eggs in his favorite chip skillet. The lake gleamed through the window, impossibly blue, framed by morning mist. "You look like hell," he said, flipping an egg. "I didn't sleep." He turned, brow furrowed. "Nightmares again?" She shook her head and poured herself coffee with shaky hands. "No. Worse. I think I found a new room." That got his attention. "Come again?" She told him everything, the tapping, the closet, the blue door. Miguel listened quietly, his expression somewhere between concern and skepticism. "That door's always been locked," he said when she finished. "Dad said it was just storage. No one's ever been in there." "Well, it's not locked anymore," she whispered. "And there's something behind it." Miguel didn't laugh. That scared her more than if he had. "Okay," he said finally. "Let's check it out. Together. Daylight rules." They waited until noon, when the sun was high and every shadow in the house had retreated to the corners. Miguel tried the closet door. Still locked. "What the hell?" Elena whispered. "It was open. Last night, it was open." Miguel tugged harder, but it held. Maybe you dreamed it? No, she said, stepping back. No, I know what I saw. Miguel knelt, fiddled with the lock. It's just an old twist latch, probably rusted. I'll get Dad's tools. He disappeared downstairs, leaving Elena alone in the hallway. That's when she heard it again. The tapping. Not from the door. From behind her. She spun. At the end of the hallway, near the stairs, stood a girl. Not a reflection. Not a trick of the light. A girl. Pale. Maybe 8 years old. Wearing a thin nightgown soaked to the hem. Her skin was too pale. Lips blue. Hair dark and matted, like it had been underwater. She pointed behind Elena. Back toward the closet. Then she vanished. Elena froze. Her breath caught mid-chest and wouldn't come loose. The hallway was empty again, just the hum of sunlight through the window and the smell of old wood. But her body remembered the girl, the cold she brought with her, the way her eyes were all pupil, no whites, as if she hadn't seen light in years. Elena? Miguel's voice echoed from downstairs. Be right back, grabbing the crowbar. She didn't answer. She turned back to the closet. Still closed. Still locked. The girl had pointed at it. Not her room, not the stairs, not a warning. A beckoning. Whatever was behind that door, she wanted Elena to see it. Miguel returned moments later, crowbar in hand. Let's crack this mystery closet. But when he inserted the edge into the door and pried, the latch gave too easily. The door swung inward with a soft groan, revealing dust, boxes, old tools, tarps. Just a closet. No hallway. No blue door. Elena pushed past him, searching, feeling along the back wall, where there should have been more space. But it was solid. Nothing moved. Nothing opened. Miguel stepped in beside her. Looks like a whole lot of nothing. I swear it was here, Elena whispered. Last night I saw. Miguel gently put a hand on her shoulder. You've always had vivid dreams, see? It's probably stress. Being out here alone, the old house, too many horror movies growing up. Maybe even sleepwalking. No, she said quietly. She pointed. The girl. She pointed. Miguel looked at her for a long time. What girl? Elena didn't answer. That night she didn't sleep. Instead, she sat cross-legged on her bed, eyes fixed on the crack beneath the closet door. At 2:13 a.m. exactly, the tapping began again. But this time, it was inside her room. She turned slowly. There, pressed against the corner near the window, was the girl. Closer now. Eyes wider. Lips cracked and gray. Her gown dripping with water that didn't pool. Her bare feet made no sound as she stepped forward. She opened her mouth. And sang. Not words. Just a low hum. A lullaby Elena didn't recognize but somehow knew. A tune lodged deep in her memory, as though she'd once sung it to a doll whose name she had forgotten. Then the girl pointed again. Elena blinked. And the blue door was there, standing in the middle of her room. It didn't make sense. The door didn't connect to anything, just stood upright, frame and all, in the center of her room like it had grown there overnight. It was a dull shade of navy, worn and faded, with a black iron handle shaped like a serpent swallowing its tail. The paint was peeling around the edges, revealing wood that pulsed ever so slightly. Like a heartbeat. Elena stood, trembling, and the girl took a step back, giving her space. The hum continued, soft, melodic, ancient. And then the girl said, in a voice like rainwater trickling down old stone, "She's waiting." Who? Elena asked, even as the words stuck in her throat. The girl didn't answer. Instead, the door creaked open. Behind it was darkness. But not a flat, blank void. This dark had depth. Movement. A living, breathing blackness that shifted like underwater shadows. Something waited just beyond sight, just past the threshold. Elena stepped back. "No," she whispered. "I'm not going in." The girl tilted her head. Sad, disappointed. Then she looked at Elena with eyes filled not with menace, but pleading. "Help her," the girl said. "She's still there." Then she turned and walked through the door. Gone. The door remained. The hum faded. Elena stood alone, trembling, the darkness behind the door calling to her like the echo of a forgotten lullaby. She didn't sleep. By sunrise, the door was gone. Vanished. No trace it had ever existed. But the corner where it had stood felt colder than the rest of the room. Later that day, while Miguel was in town grabbing groceries, Elena crept into the attic. She'd never been up there alone. The trapdoor groaned under her weight, and the wooden ladder creaked with every step. The air smelled of cedar, mildew, and something older, like fabric that had never been washed. She pulled the string for the single hanging bulb. The attic was packed, old furniture, boxes, sheet-covered shapes. But one thing drew her attention immediately. A full-length mirror stood at the far end, wrapped in a dusty drop cloth. Elena walked toward it, something in her chest twisting tighter with each step. She reached out and pulled the cloth away. What she saw wasn't her reflection. It was a girl, maybe 9 years old, soaking wet, eyes wide, mouthing one word over and over. "Sister." Elena staggered back, the cloth slipping from her hands. The mirror rocked on its stand but didn't fall. She clutched her chest, gasping, heart hammering so loudly she couldn't hear anything else. Not the creaking of the attic, not her own breath. The girl in the mirror stood still, her lips moving in slow, soundless repetition. "Sister." Elena stepped closer, her hands trembling. "No," she whispered. "That's not possible." The girl looked like her. Younger, thinner, with tangled dark hair that clung to her face. The kind of reflection you'd get if you aged yourself backward a decade and drowned the result. "Who are you?" Elena asked, voice hoarse. This time, the girl in the mirror responded with a whisper so soft it wasn't heard, it was felt. "You forgot me." Elena reached for the glass, fingertips hovering just inches from the surface. Her reflection didn't move in tandem. The girl inside stared back, unmoving, mouthing the same word again. "Sister." Then, without warning, the glass cracked. A thin, spiderweb fracture bloomed from the center, spreading fast, jagged lines reaching toward the edges like lightning. Elena yanked her hand back. But something moved behind the glass. A shape. Slender, pale, pressing up against the inside as if trying to claw its way out. The girl's mouth opened wide now, wider than it should have, as though unhinged. And a sound escaped the mirror, not a scream. A rushing. Like a great inhale before a scream. Elena stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of boxes, dust flying into the shaft of light. Footsteps pounded up the stairs. "Elena?" Miguel's voice. "You okay?" She couldn't look away from the mirror. The girl was gone now. The glass intact. No cracks. No movement. Just her own reflection staring back, wild-eyed and pale. Miguel reached the top of the ladder and froze. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Elena turned, shaking. "I think I did." She didn't mention the word, the girl said. She didn't have to. Because as she turned to leave the attic, the mirror fogged from the inside. And 3 small letters appeared in dripping condensation. Eli. Miguel stared at the fogged mirror and the word etched within it. "Elena," he said carefully. "Who's Eli?" She didn't answer. Her mind had locked itself inside a memory she hadn't thought of in years. A dream she'd always told herself. Something her brain had invented to fill in the blanks of a lost childhood moment. But now it clawed its way up from the basement of her thoughts. A name. A laugh. A little girl with the same eyes as her, smaller hands, always holding Elena's wrist when they walked near the lake because she was scared of the water. Eli. The sister no one ever spoke of. I don't know, Elena whispered, lying before she could stop herself. Miguel's eyes stayed on her a moment longer, then dropped to the mirror again. The letters were gone. The glass had cleared. Elena, he said, quieter now. What's going on with you? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. How could she explain? The blue door. The girl. The reflection. The cold breath of something older than the house itself leaking through the cracks in reality. Instead, she asked, Do you remember anyone named Eli? Miguel blinked. Eli? He frowned. I had a friend in 3rd grade with that name, but no. Not anyone close. Elena's voice trembled. Not someone in the family? He tilted his head. Why would you think that? She didn't answer. That night, Elena found herself standing outside the closet again. 2:13 a.m. She hadn't meant to walk there. She didn't even remember leaving her room. But there she was. Barefoot. Holding her breath. The closet door stood open. The hallway was back. And at the end of it stood the blue door, pulsing faintly, as if it were waiting. Behind her, the floor creaked. She turned. The girl was there again. Closer than ever. Her skin now flaked like wet parchment. Her hair longer, hanging in ropes. She raised a hand and gently pointed not at the door, but at Elena herself. You let me go, she said. Elena took a step back. I didn't. I don't remember. I don't know you. The girl tilted her head, then placed her hands over her face. When she pulled them away, it was Elena's face beneath them. Same eyes. Same mouth. Same scar under the left brow from the tree branch fall when she was 7. And she whispered, I remember everything. Elena stumbled backward, striking the closet frame hard enough to rattle the hinges. The girl, the mirror Elena, stood motionless, wearing her face like a second skin. Her lips parted, revealing waterlogged gums and shattered baby teeth. I'm the piece they forgot, she said, voice layered, overlapping, Elena's voice and something deeper, hollow and ancient beneath it. You didn't mean to leave me, but you did. And now you're whole without me. That isn't fair. I don't understand, Elena breathed. I don't remember you. I don't know you. You chose not to, the girl said. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but something black and thick, like oil. They told you I wasn't real. That I never was. That the drowning didn't happen. Elena's knees buckled. Drowning. The word lodged itself into her ribs like a blade. Images flickered, a dock, the lake at sunset, hands reaching up through the water. A scream. Someone screaming her name. Eli. No. Not someone. She was Eli. And the girl in front of her? Elena, the girl whispered. You were the one who survived. Elena's world swayed. No, she said, barely audible. That's not right. I'm Elena. I always have been. You took her name, the girl said. They gave it to you after. They buried me inside you. But I remember. The door behind her creaked. The blue door. Still open. The hallway stretched, impossibly long now, yawning deeper than before. Wind sucked from it like the inhale of a sleeping beast. You don't belong here, the girl said. Not anymore. A sound rose up through the hallway. A voice. Miguel's. Mija? Elena turned. He stood at the end of the real hallway, bleary-eyed, confused, his silhouette haloed by lamplight. I heard something, he said. Are you okay? But before she could answer, a hand shot from the blue door. Pale. Wet. It grabbed her wrist. And pulled. Elena screamed as she was yanked through the doorway, the closet slamming shut behind her with a final, echoing boom. She fell into cold. Not water, but cold so absolute it felt wet, soaking into her lungs, threading ice through her bones. Elena landed hard on something soft but unsteady. Moss? Flesh? Her fingers sank into it and recoiled. It pulsed once beneath her like a dying heartbeat. She scrambled to her feet, breath ragged. Around her stretched a corridor, endless, narrow, walls made not of wood or stone, but memory. Flickering images danced across them. Birthdays, scraped knees, fireworks above the lake, sunlight on brown skin and dark curls. Her life. But the scenes twisted, distorted, like watching them through warped glass. She turned in a full circle, but there was no door. No handle. Just endless hallway. Elena! A voice called. It echoed without source. She turned toward it instinctively, heart pounding. The girl was there again, Eli. But not as before. Her face was clearer now, less monstrous. She looked like Elena had in the 3rd grade. Hair in pigtails. The blue pajamas with the embroidered bear on the chest, the one she used to call her bravery suit. "You're me," Elena said. "You're the part they buried." Eli nodded slowly. "I was scared. I slipped. I fell in. I remember screaming for you. I didn't hear you." "You did," Eli said, her voice hollow. "But you were afraid too." Elena dropped to her knees. "I was 7. No one told me you even existed after. Just said I had an accident. That I bumped my head and imagined things. They chose not to remember me," Eli said. "But I never forgot you. I waited." Elena stood slowly, her hands balled into fists. "What do you want from me?" "To be whole again," Eli said. "One name. One self. But I am me. And I'm the part of you that never got to grow up," Eli whispered. "The fear. The loneliness. The water." Elena looked around, at the walls, the flickering pieces of her life. She closed her eyes. Then opened them again and said, "Then let's end it." Eli blinked. "What?" "I won't run. I won't bury you anymore. I'll remember. All of it. I'll carry it." The ground shook beneath her feet. The corridor groaned like the hull of a ship about to break. Eli's eyes filled with tears, real ones now. Clean. Human. She stepped forward and hugged Elena. Their forms rippled, merged. Light flooded the corridor, and Elena remembered everything. The light seared everything white. But it wasn't blinding, it was warm, like sunlight on skin after a long, dark winter. Elena felt herself unfold from within, as though parts of her that had long been walled off were finally being let in from the cold. She saw it all. Eli's fear as the dock gave way, the water swallowing her, the blurred panic of drowning. She remembered standing on the shore, screaming her sister's name, and the silence that followed. The adult's confusion. The way the memory had blurred into a lie told so many times it became truth. There was only one child. But now she remembered being two. Elena and Eli. One who survived. One who didn't. The hallway dissolved around her, its walls peeling away like ash in the wind. Her feet found solid ground again, oak floorboards. The creak of them familiar, real. She was back in her room. The closet. "They never told you. After the accident. I was the one who came back. She drowned." "No," he said, shaking his head slowly. "No, that's not. Mom and Dad never. They erased her," Elena said. "Buried the grief. Buried me. But she didn't go away. She waited." Miguel dropped into the chair by her desk, eyes glassy. "Jesus!" Elena walked to the window. The lake rippled in the distance, gentle, undisturbed. Then something caught her eye on the glass. A tiny handprint, pressed against the inside. She reached up and placed her palm over it. A perfect match. She didn't cry. She smiled. "I'll remember you now," she whispered. Behind her, the mirror on her wall showed her reflection, and standing beside her, Eli. Just a girl. Whole again. Story 2, Roadside Saints. The desert at night had a way of swallowing sound. Even the engine of the old Jeep Cherokee seemed muted beneath the vastness of stars and dust. Joe hadn't seen another car in over an hour, and the GPS had long since gone silent, its screen frozen with a red exclamation mark. Signal lost. She gripped the wheel tighter, her knuckles pale in the moonlight. "Relax," Ash said from the passenger seat, kicking his bare feet up onto the dashboard. "It's just a detour." Joe glanced sideways. "Yeah? Then where the hell are we?" Ash shrugged. "New Mexico. Somewhere south of I don't give a shit." They were supposed to be headed for the Grand Canyon. One last summer road trip before grad school stole their time for good. Just the two of them and an endless road. Joe had been careful, mapping out stops, fuel stations, places to sleep. Then the detour signs started. Then the construction. Then the signal died. Now the gas gauge blinked at her like a dare. "We need to find something soon," she muttered. "Anything." As if summoned, the headlights swept over a sign at the edge of the road. Bent metal. Shot full of holes. It read, "St. Odette's Shrine, 1 mile." Ash squinted. "A church?" Joe slowed the Jeep. The road curved off to the right, a narrow gravel path that disappeared into scrub and shadow. No lights ahead. Just a suggestion of buildings far off in the dark. "What kind of shrines open at midnight?" she asked. "Ghost towns gotta pray too," Ash said with a grin. Joe hesitated. Then the Jeep sputtered. Then died. "No," she muttered, coasting as far as she could until the vehicle rolled to a stop beside a dried-out cactus. She turned the key. Nothing. Not even a cough. Ash leaned out the window, peering down the dark road. "Guess we're walking." Joe stared at the sign again. St. Odette's Shrine. She didn't like how the name lingered in her mind. Like she'd heard it before. Maybe in a nightmare. Still, they had no choice. They grabbed their backpacks, turned on their flashlights, and started down the gravel path. The desert closed in behind them like a mouth. And far ahead, behind the outline of crumbling adobe and thorn fences, a bell rang. 3 slow chimes. The bell echoed long after it should have stopped, as if the desert air carried it too eagerly, unwilling to let it fade. Joe felt it in her ribs, each clang like a heartbeat she didn't own. Ash walked ahead, the beam from his flashlight slicing across brittle bushes and cracked stones. "Creepy but cool," he muttered. Joe wasn't so sure. "Why would a bell ring out here? There's no one. Maybe it's on a timer. In a town with no power?" Ash shrugged. "Maybe it's a miracle. We are heading toward a shrine, right?" Joe didn't respond. Her boots crunched against the gravel, dust kicking up in clouds that shimmered in the flashlight beams. Ahead, St. Odette's came into view. It wasn't what she expected. Not a church. Not exactly. The buildings were low and sun-bleached, made from adobe that cracked at the corners like dried-out clay. A courtyard of half-dead cacti stood in the middle, wrapped with rusting prayer ribbons that fluttered without wind. Candles burned in recessed walls, though Joe saw no wires, no generators. Ash turned slowly, his flashlight catching on a sign bolted to the edge of the old wooden chapel. "We who are lost seek her light." "Sheesh," he muttered. "Little intense. Let's just ask for help," Joe said, adjusting the strap on her pack. "We'll call for a tow, and we're out." They approached the chapel. Its door stood open. No lights inside, just the faint flicker of candle glow, and shadows that danced too slowly to be natural. Jo stepped across the threshold first. Her foot struck something. She looked down. A row of shoes. Boots, sandals, heels, lined up in pairs along the wall. Too many to count. Covered in dust. Unmoving. Ash stepped in behind her. "Why do I feel like we're trespassing?" "Because we are." They stepped deeper into the chapel. At the front, where an altar should have been, stood a statue. A woman. Tall. Hooded. Her hands stretched forward, not in blessing, but in offering. As though holding something invisible. Her face was serene, eyes closed. But what stopped Jo wasn't the statue. It was the faces pressed into the walls. Not paintings. Not carvings. Real. Mummified. Hundreds of faces, fused into the adobe. Mouths open in silent prayer. Eyes wide. Ash took a step back. "What the actual?" The door slammed shut behind them, and the bell rang again. One slow chime. Jo spun toward the chapel doors. They were thick, iron-braced, and now bolted from the inside, as if the building had come alive and sealed them in. Her flashlight beam danced across splintered wood and flaked rust. "What the hell is this place?" Ash hissed, backing toward her. Jo's mouth was dry. "A shrine," she said, her voice low, distant. "Or a tomb." The candlelight flickered harder now, as if reacting to their fear. Along the adobe walls, the faces seemed to shift, not moving, not alive, but changing. Their mouths opened wider. Their lips cracked. Some had tears trailing down leathery cheeks. A few had rosaries tangled in what remained of their hair. Ash stepped closer to the statue at the front. "Is that Saint Odette?" Jo followed, breath shallow. The woman's statue towered over them, maybe 10 feet high. Her robe was chiseled with frightening detail, every fold of fabric etched with symbols that looked like a language, but none Jo could place. The hood covered most of the face, but her mouth curved upwards slightly. Not a smile, something subtler. Hungrier. In her outstretched hands lay nothing. Ash squinted at the base. "Look at the plaque." Jo knelt, flashlight tilted down. The bronze was old and tarnished, but the words were clear. "She waits for the lost. She becomes the path. Give her your feet. And walk no more." Jo stood fast. "Nope. No, no, no." Ash turned to her, pale now. "All those shoes at the entrance. They weren't forgotten. They were left." A wind stirred behind them. Not desert wind. Breath. Slow. Deep. Coming from within the walls. The candles flickered out. One by one. Like eyes closing. Jo raised her flashlight, and in that instant, the statue's face was looking straight at her. Eyes open. Black. Staring. She screamed, yanking Ash by the wrist, dragging him toward the back of the chapel. There was a service door near the altar, half rotted and hanging on one hinge. They burst through into darkness. Storage room. Crates. Shelves of tattered hymnals and bone-dry candles. Ash slammed the door behind them, jamming a fallen chair under the handle. They breathed hard in the dark. Jo whispered, "We need to go. Now." But something moved behind the crates. A soft shuffle. Followed by a whisper that wasn't theirs. "She walks again." Jo aimed her flashlight into the shadows between crates. Nothing. Just a stack of broken votive stands and an old altar cloth that fluttered slightly, though the air was still. Ash stood frozen beside her, breath shallow, fingers clenching the strap of his pack. Then a foot stepped into the light. Small. Bare. Dust-covered, the skin dry and cracked. Then another. A figure emerged, a boy maybe 12. Skin stretched thin over bone. His eyes were wide, glassy, like he hadn't blinked in years. He didn't look at them. He looked past them, toward the sealed chapel. She walks again, he repeated, voice brittle and papery. That means the path is open. Joe took a cautious step forward. What path? Who are you? The boy blinked slowly, as if those questions required more energy than he had. We all came for something, he said. Forgiveness. Escape. Some just wanted to vanish. He raised his hands. Joe's light caught the scars along his palms, shallow, symmetrical, like offerings carved willingly. They gave her what she asked, he said. Ash shook his head. That statue? That thing, it's not a saint. No, the boy whispered. She's older than saints. They just named her so they'd feel better. Joe felt her heart sink. And what does she want? The boy's expression didn't change, but he pointed downward, to their feet. She wants what carries you away. Joe looked down. The floor was wrong. It was no longer concrete or adobe. It pulsed beneath her shoes, damp, soft, like skin stretched tight over hollow bone. She stepped back instinctively, and a ripple moved through it, like something beneath reacting. Ash stumbled. Jesus Christ, what is this? The path, the boy said. And now that she's walking again. He trailed off. Behind them, the chapel door groaned. Not the one they'd come through. The front doors. The ones that had locked them in. They creaked open with unnatural slowness. Joe raised her flashlight. There was nothing there. Just darkness. And in that darkness, footsteps. Slow. Bare. Deliberate. Coming closer. Ash grabbed Joe's arm. We need to get out. Now. They turned to flee, but the back wall was no longer solid. A hallway had opened. Long, narrow. Lit by flickering candles on either side. At the far end stood another door. Painted red. The hallway pulsed with a low hum, felt more than heard. The candles along the wall burned low, their flames tall and unnaturally still. No flicker. No heat. As if they weren't made of wax but memory. Joe stepped cautiously forward, heart hammering. Behind them, the chapel groaned again. The sound of the statue, Odette, or whatever wore her shape, dragging something across the floor. Ash didn't look back. He couldn't. They reached the first set of candles. The wax was blood red, dripping upward toward the ceiling. Joe swallowed a scream and kept moving. The boy hadn't followed. When she glanced back, he was gone. No footprints. No breath. Just absence. What's behind the red door? Joe whispered. Ash shook his head. Nothing good. The air changed the closer they got. The pressure tightened around their heads like a band. The scent of copper and incense filled Joe's nose, clinging to the back of her throat. Then, at the very end of the hallway, the red door shifted. Not opened. Breathed. Its surface rippled, paint sloughing off like skin after a sunburn. Beneath the red, a black so deep it shone. The handle was bone white, shaped like a hand curled into a beacon. Joe stepped closer. Against every instinct. The moment she touched it, the candles extinguished. Total darkness. She gasped, and the door opened inward on its own. What lay beyond wasn't a room. It was a chapel. Another one. An identical replica of the first. Same walls. Same statue. Same faces fused into the adobe. Only now, they were fresh. The faces blinked. Mouths moved. One of them whispered, Joe. She staggered back, bumping into Ash. Did you hear that? But he was staring at the statue. His mouth slightly open. His pupils huge. She looks like my mom, he said. Joe turned, and saw that he was right. It wasn't the same Saint Odette they'd seen before. This statue wore Ash's past. His mother's eyes. his grandmother's locket around her neck, his pain carved into stone. "She's showing us something," Joe whispered. "Something personal." Ash reached toward the statue. "No," Joe warned. "Don't." But his fingers brushed the stone, and the world went white. Joe stumbled backward as the world twisted, white light blooming like a migraine behind her eyes, warping sound, erasing floor, air, everything. For a moment, she wasn't sure if she was standing or falling or floating. Then, she was somewhere else. The desert was gone. So was the chapel. She stood on a suburban street, its lawns perfectly trimmed, its sky a fixed, unnatural blue. The air smelled like sprinklers and pavement in summer. Somewhere nearby, a lawnmower buzzed. Birds chirped. But it all sounded wrong. Too mechanical, like a recording looped on cheap speakers. Ahead of her stood Ash. He was 10 years old. He wore a Ninja Turtles backpack, both straps tight against his skinny shoulders. He stood on the porch of a beige house with blue shutters, staring at the front door. And he was crying. Joe tried to move toward him, to call out, but she couldn't speak. Her mouth wouldn't open. Her limbs refused to listen. The front door opened. A woman stood there. His mother. Beautiful, stern, dressed in her work uniform, hospital scrubs, her name tag shining under the artificial sun. "Why were you just standing there?" she snapped. Ash flinched. I missed the bus." "You always miss the bus," she said. "I don't have time for this. Get inside." Little Ash stepped forward, and Joe was pulled along with him, the world dragging her forward like a puppet. Inside the house, everything shifted again. Not space. Memory. Each room flickered between times. Christmas trees blinking in and out, birthday balloons fading like ghosts. Arguments hung in the air like cigarette smoke. Then, they were in a kitchen. And Ash, present Ash, was sitting at the table, holding a glass of milk. His mother was seated across from him. But her face was wrong. Blank. Smooth as clay. She tilted her head. "You came back," she said in a voice like crushed glass. "You never said goodbye." Ash shook his head slowly. "You're not her. I'm what's left," the thing said. "I'm the part of her you carry. The wound." Joe wanted to scream. To reach him. To drag him out of this warped place. But she couldn't move. The thing stood and walked toward Ash. "You can stay," she said. "You can forget. Let go of the hurt. I'll feed you peace forever." Ash reached for her hand. Joe finally found her voice. "Ash, don't." Ash froze. His fingers, inches from the thing's outstretched hand, trembled. He looked over his shoulder, right at Joe. And in that moment she saw him see her. Not just in the dream, or the memory, or the illusion, he saw her, standing outside the scene like a ghost at the edge of his grief. "You don't belong here," she said. His gaze dropped to the thing wearing his mother's face. Her smile never wavered. Her hand still reached. "I'm tired," Ash whispered. "You don't understand, Joe. This is easy." "Is it?" Joe asked, stepping forward, forcing her way into the memory like pushing through a fog wall. "She's not real. You think staying here makes it hurt less, but it doesn't. It just makes you forget who you are." Ash's expression twisted, anger, sorrow, guilt all blooming at once. "She died and I never said goodbye." Joe nodded. "And you won't if you stay here. Because this isn't her. This is the pain that feeds on you. This is what that statue wants." The woman turned her blank face to Joe now. Something rippled beneath the skin. Like 100 mouths pressed against the inside, struggling to tear free. "She's mine," it hissed. "He is mine. This is his sanctuary." "No," Joe said, stepping between them. "This is a coffin with wallpaper." The walls of the kitchen trembled. Lights flickered. The room began to peel, as if a great wind had risen inside. The memories tore away from the walls like rotting paper. The fridge vanished. The table shriveled. The woman's form crackled, limbs bending backward, her face melting into a smear of gray. Ash covered his ears, falling to his knees. Joe grabbed him by the shoulders. Ash, look at me. You don't have to carry this alone. But you do have to leave it behind. Tears slid down his cheeks. I don't know how. You just did, she said. She helped him up. The false world shattered like glass dropped from high above. They were back in the candlelit chapel. Ash collapsed beside her, gasping, the echo of sobs still in his throat. The statue's eyes were closed again. Joe helped him sit up. Are you okay? She whispered. He nodded. Yeah. But that door, that wasn't a shrine. It was a trap. And behind them, the red door still stood open, waiting. Joe and Ash stared at the red door, its surface pulsing faintly, like something breathing just behind it. Either of them moved. I think, Joe said slowly, this place, it's showing us our ghosts. Ash rubbed his face, still pale. It didn't just show me. It invited me to stay. It made forgetting feel like mercy. Joe looked back toward the black chapel, where the candle flames had resumed their frozen glow, where the statue of Saint Odette stood once again serene and hollow. But it's not mercy. It's theft. It strips you down to nothing but grief and tells you that's all you ever were. They stood slowly. From deep beyond the red door came another chime. A bell. But this time, it wasn't from the shrine. It came from somewhere lower, beneath their feet. Ash turned to Joe. We're not done. No, she agreed. There's more. The hallway behind the red door had changed again. Longer now. The candles gone, replaced by lanterns made of bone and glass, each flickering with pale blue fire. The walls weren't adobe anymore. They were ribbed, veined, like they'd been carved from a giant's spine. Joe stepped in first. The air grew colder with every footfall. Their boots echoed on stone that felt too smooth, too deliberate. Etched into the walls were more messages, scratched in dozens of languages. Some Joe recognized. Most she didn't. But one phrase appeared over and over again, written in blood, burned into stone, chiseled with trembling hands. She waits below. They emerged into a cavern. Vast. Circular. A pit yawning at its center, ringed by hundreds, maybe thousands, of stone statues. All women. All faceless. All posed with arms outstretched in the same offering gesture. Joe approached the edge of the pit. Far, far below, something moved. Slowly. Rhythmically. Like it was waking up. Ash stepped beside her. Do you hear that? Joe tilted her head. From the pit rose a chant. Low. Layered. 100 voices. Then 1,000. All whispering one name. Odette. 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 And just beneath that, a new sound. Footsteps. Climbing. The footsteps were slow. Deliberate. Not hurried, not clumsy, confident. Each one echoed up the stone pit like a war drum, impossibly loud in the cavernous silence. Joe stepped back. Joe's flashlight beam flicked across one. Its head had turned slightly, just enough to follow her. They're watching, Ash said. No, Joe corrected. They're waiting. The air rippled. Heat shimmered along the edge of the pit, though the air stayed bitter cold. The footsteps grew louder. Joe risked a look down. Something was climbing. Not a person. Something wearing the shape of a woman. She saw the edge of a long white garment trailing along the stone. Fingers like ivory roots, too long, too thin. Hair that moved as if underwater. Joe pulled back, trembling. We have to seal it. Ash turned to her. Seal what? There's no door. No gate. We're in her home. Joe's eyes scanned the statues. Maybe that's how. What? She's not alone down here, Joe said, stepping to the nearest statue. These women, they were part of her. Once. Maybe still are. She pressed a hand against the stone. It was warm. Alive. It pulsed once beneath her palm, like it remembered what it was. Joe turned to Ash. We need to wake them up. Ash looked down into the pit. The figure was nearly halfway up now. He could see her face. It was his again. Not the memory from the chapel. His face now, stretched across a mouth that didn't close. He nodded, swallowing hard. Tell me what to do. Joe placed both hands on the statue. Give her back what was taken. The statue's arms moved. And the pit screamed. The scream was unlike anything Joe had ever heard. It wasn't pain. It wasn't rage. It was hunger denied. The statues around the chamber convulsed, their stone forms cracking like eggshells. Light burst from within them, white gold and blinding, spilling through every fracture, every fault, as if their bodies were only ever prisons for something much older. Joe stumbled back, shielding her eyes. Ash fell to his knees, mouth open in silent awe. One by one, the statues began to move. Not all at once, but as if waking from a centuries-long sleep. Limbs unbent. Feet shifted. Some reached for one another. Some began to pray. But all of them turned their heads toward the pit. Odette was still climbing, but now her shape flickered. One moment a woman. The next, a beast of smoke. Then a thing made of too many hands. Then nothing at all. Joe stepped forward, heart thundering. Do you see? She shouted into the pit. They remember! The chanting stopped. The air fell still. Odette paused mid-ascent, her fingers digging into the stone, talons clenching. And for the first time, she spoke. Her voice was like cracked bone over fire. They forgot me. No, Joe said, trembling. They buried you. Ash stood beside her, voice steady now. And you fed on everything they left behind. The statues were all watching now. And smiling. Not in worship. In defiance. Joe looked around the chamber. What now? Ash whispered. Joe turned toward the central statue, larger than the others. At its feet lay a bowl carved of black stone. A votive basin. She stepped toward it. Wait, Ash said. What are you doing? I'm finishing what they started. She reached into her pack, pulled out her pocket knife. Without hesitation, she sliced her palm. Blood welled up, hot and alive. She let it drip into the basin. The stone glowed. Odette shrieked from the pit, her form unraveling, turning inside out. Her claws slipped from the stone. She fell. The pit cracked wide with her descent. The chamber rumbled, ceiling crumbling. The statues turned back to stone. The light dimmed. And then, silence. The well was sealed. Joe collapsed beside the basin, her hands still bleeding, her breath shallow. The wound stung, but it felt clean, honest, like something finally given after years of carrying everything in silence. Ash dropped beside her, eyes scanning the now motionless statues. The chamber no longer pulsed with threat. The air, though cold, felt empty of presence. The weight had lifted. I think it's over, he said softly. Joe nodded, pressing her hand to her shirt. She's sealed again. Ash looked toward the pit. It was still deep, still dark, but no longer bottomless. No longer alive. The statues stood around it like guardians, no longer waiting, but watching, remembering. How did you know what to do? He asked. Joe looked at him, weary but clear-eyed. I didn't. I just gave something real. Something mine. And the rest followed. They stood together and turned back toward the hallway. The red door was gone. In its place stood the rotted service door from the chapel, now slightly ajar. They passed through it in silence. The chapel beyond was changed. Sunlight streamed through the broken roof, as though dawn had finally caught up to them. Dust motes floated in the light. The faces in the walls were gone, replaced with smooth adobe. The shoes at the entrance? All gone. Only faint outlines remained, like footprints after rain. Outside, the desert was quiet, the air dry and crisp. Their jeep stood waiting on the road, but slightly open, as if someone had been working on it. Ash blinked. "Did you?" Jo shook her head. They approached cautiously. Ash turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. Jo climbed into the passenger seat, glancing once more toward the shrine. The bell tower, silent now, stood crooked but intact. As they pulled away, the sun rising behind them, Jo reached into her pocket. The knife was gone. In its place, a smooth, flat stone etched with a single phrase. "We who are lost seek her light." Jo stared at it, then tossed it out the window. The stone landed beside the road. And as the dust settled around it, the faintest sound of a bell whispered across the wind. Story 3. The Lake at Dagger's Edge. The lake didn't have a real name. On maps it was just Reservoir 19, a leftover from some failed water management project in the 70s. But to the kids who grew up in the nearby town of Dagger's Edge, it was always just the lake. Capitalized, feared, revered. A rite of passage. And on summer nights, a dare. "It's bullshit," Darren said, flicking a mosquito off his arm as he crouched by the fire. "All those stories about the girl drowning, the lights under the water, the howling? You all are suckers. Then why'd you bring a baseball bat?" Melanie teased, her flashlight catching the Louisville Slugger leaning against the log. Darren shrugged, his cocky grin back in place. "For when the lake monsters show up." The 6 of them, Darren, Melanie, Tyler, Rosa, Caleb, and June, were all 17 and bored and aching for something to puncture the sticky heat of July. They'd grown up together in Dagger's Edge, a town of rusted cars, half-shuttered shops, and the smell of pine and asphalt. Every generation had their lake dare. Tonight it was their turn. "Midnight swim," Rosa said, raising her solo cup like a challenge. "No lights. No clothes. Just the 6 of us and the dark." Tyler laughed nervously. "You're all insane. What if there's leeches or something?" "I'm more worried about the ghost girl," June said quietly. Her dark hair clung to her cheeks, sweat or nerves or both. "The one they say pulls people under." Melanie threw an arm around her. "That's just a campfire story. Like Bloody Mary or Slender Man. Nothing's gonna happen." But when midnight came, and they stripped down to their underwear or less, and slipped into the inky black water, something did happen. Something they would never forget. Caleb was the first to go under. Not in a splashing, flailing way. Not like he was joking. 1 second he was there, laughing, water up to his chest. The next, he was gone. No sound. No scream. Just ripples where he'd been. "Caleb?" Tyler called. Silence. Then the ripples stilled. Then the lake went calm. And the woods behind them suddenly felt like they were leaning closer, listening. "Caleb?" Rosa whispered this time, voice tight with the kind of fear that doesn't register until it's too late. "Quit screwing around." The group treaded water in a loose circle, eyes scanning the black surface. Somewhere a loon called, a long, wavering cry that seemed to stretch the silence thin. "I didn't see him go under," June said. "He didn't dive. He didn't even splash. He probably swam under," Darren said, but there was a tremor in his voice. "You know, playing around. He's not that good a swimmer." Melanie muttered, spinning in place, searching. "He gets winded during pee," They waited. 10 seconds. 30. A full minute. Rosa was the first to move. She paddled toward the last place Caleb had been and dove under. Her legs kicked briefly above the surface before she disappeared into the black. A heartbeat. Then 2. Then 20. Nothing. The others shouted her name now, frantic, sloshing through the water, trying not to imagine the cold fingers dragging them under. Darren dove in next, his splash loud and desperate. He resurfaced seconds later, coughing. Nothing, he shouted, gasping. It's just dark. And deep. I didn't even hit bottom. Melanie looked at June, then Tyler, then back at the shore. We need to get out. Now. They swam hard, their breath ragged, bodies moving in frantic synchrony. The rocks at the shoreline scraped their feet as they scrambled out. June tripped and Darren caught her by the elbow, hoisting her upright. They stood there, shivering, dripping, staring back at the lake. The surface was glass smooth. Not even a ripple. Something pulled him, June said, eyes wide and wet. It pulled them both. Melanie wrapped her arms around herself. We need to call someone. The cops, rangers, someone. With what? Tyler snapped. Our phones are in the car, like half a mile back. They stood in stunned silence until Darren muttered, I'm going in after them. No, June said quickly, clutching his arm. Please, Darren. Don't. He shook her off, pacing along the shoreline. I can't leave them out there. What if they're stuck on something? What if they're alive? Or what if whatever took them is still down there? Tyler said, voice brittle. And you're next. From behind them, in the direction of the trail, something snapped. A branch. Then another. They all froze. It wasn't an animal. The rhythm was too slow. Deliberate. Footsteps. Coming from the dark woods. Toward them. The fire had burned low while they were in the water, casting strange, shifting shadows along the tree-line. The footsteps paused just out of sight, somewhere behind the last row of pines. Then came a sound that made the hairs on Melanie's arms rise, a low, wet dragging. Like something heavy being pulled across the forest floor. Get back, she whispered, stepping in front of June. Darren clenched the baseball bat, the wood slick in his damp grip. Who's there? He shouted. Show yourself. Silence answered. Then, slowly, a figure emerged from between the trees. Rosa. Her skin was pale, too pale, the moonlight turning her almost translucent. Her dark hair clung to her face and neck like seaweed. She didn't speak. She just stood there, breathing heavily, arms hanging limp at her sides. Rosa! June cried, rushing forward. But Rosa flinched. She stepped back, into the shadows. No, wait, Melanie said. Something's wrong. Darren raised the bat slightly. Where's Caleb? Rosa lifted her head. Her eyes, wide, glassy, hollow. I saw him, she said softly. Her voice didn't sound like her. It was thin and stretched, as if spoken from far away. Where is he? Darren demanded. He's with her, Rosa said. Her gaze drifted back toward the lake. She wanted him. June froze. Who, Rosa? Who took him? The girl, Rosa whispered. The one beneath the water. She's waiting. No one moved. Then Rosa's mouth opened again, but this time she didn't speak. She screamed. A shrill, rag scream that made Tyler drop to his knees, clutching his ears. The sound wasn't just loud, it pressed into them, like weight. Like pain. Then Rosa dropped, collapsing like a puppet with its strings cut. She hit the ground hard, twitching once before going still. Rosa! Darren shouted, rushing to her side. He dropped the bat and knelt beside her, checking her pulse. She's alive, he said, relief in his voice. But just barely. June knelt next to him, brushing the wet hair from Rosa's face. We need to get her out of here. Something isn't right. Something's wrong with this place. We should never have come. Melanie muttered, eyes locked on the lake. From the water, far out in the center, came a new ripple. Something was rising. Not a body. Not human. The lake at Dagger's Edge. Part 4, 2000 characters. It started as a shimmer, like heat rising off pavement, only it was wrong, warped, trembling across the lake's still surface. Then the water bulged upward. No splash, no wave, just a slow, circular swell. As if something beneath it, something enormous, was pushing its way toward the surface. Melanie backed away, dragging June with her. We need to run. No, Darren said, cradling Rosa in his arms. She's not waking up. We can't carry her all the way to the car. We need help. We don't have time, Tyler said, voice cracking. The bulge crested. And then they saw it. A face. Just beneath the surface, staring up at them, eyes wide open, milky white. The mouth moved, slow and unnatural, lips curling like petals on a rotting flower. Hair floated in a dark halo around it, black and endless. Skin as pale as bone. It was a girl. But not Rosa. Not any girl they'd ever known. June dropped to her knees. It's her. The drowning girl. Melanie grabbed her, yanking her up. No. Don't look at her. But June couldn't look away. Tears streamed down her face, mouth trembling. She's not angry. She's lonely. The girl's face slowly sank back below the surface, fading into the black. For a breath, everything was silent. Then Rosa's body seized in Darren's arms. Her back arched violently, eyes snapping open, and they were pure white like the girl's. Her mouth moved, mimicking the underwater specter. A voice, not Rosa's, rasped out of her throat. She was promised. What? Darren asked, shaking her. Rosa, wake up! She was promised, the voice said again, louder now, strangled and wet. By who? Promised to who? Tyler shouted, backing toward the woods. The voice turned toward him without Rosa's head moving, her lips cracking open into a grin that was far too wide. You all know. No, Melanie said, but her voice faltered. June's face was crumpling, her hands covering her mouth. We didn't know what we were doing. What's going on? Darren said, wild-eyed. What are you talking about? It was a game, June whispered. Years ago. We were just kids. I didn't think it was real. Rosa's body began to rise from Darren's arms, limp, stiff and jerking. You broke the circle. The voice rasped. You opened the lake. Then Rosa's body collapsed again. Limp. Shivering. Silent. From the center of the lake came a sound. Not a splash. Not a scream. A song. A soft, humming lullaby. Sung in a voice no child should ever have heard. The lullaby was low and sweet, almost tender. It floated across the water like mist, curling through the trees and into their ears. Darren froze mid-motion, eyes distant. Tyler sank slowly to his knees, his expression going slack. No, June whispered, clutching her ears. Don't listen. Don't let her in. Melanie was already moving, pulling Rosa to her feet, trying to shoulder the dead weight. Help me, June. June snapped out of it and took Rosa's other arm. Together, they half-dragged her toward the tree line. Darren didn't move. Darren! Melanie barked. Move! But he was walking toward the lake. Slow. Dreamlike. The bat lay forgotten at his feet. June broke away from Rosa, stumbling after him. Darren, no! He didn't seem to hear her. His toes touched the water's edge. His lips moved, singing the lullaby under his breath. His eyes were glassy. Melanie dropped Rosa and grabbed Darren's wrist, yanking hard. Snap out of it! Darren blinked, shook his head, took a step back. Then two. What the hell was I? You almost walked into it, Melanie said. That song, it wants you. The surface of the lake began to ripple again. More faces appeared beneath the water. One was Caleb. His eyes were wide, but not afraid. Empty. His mouth moved with the same lullaby. Jesus, Tyler muttered, staggering back. They're all singing. The other faces surfaced, surrounding Caleb. All pale. All young. Boys, girls. Dozens of them. None older than 18. They weren't floating. They were staring. Rosa stirred on the ground, groaning. Don't let her see you, she croaked. Don't look right at her face. June knelt beside her. What do you mean? She wears your thoughts. Your guilt. She finds it and puts it on. That's how she pulls you in. What the hell is she? Tyler asked. Rosa's lips trembled. She was the first. The one they buried in the lake. But not all of her sank. Some part of her stayed, waiting. For what? Darren asked. For us, Rosa said. For anyone dumb enough to come after dark. The lullaby faded. The lake grew still again. But now, on the opposite shore, a shape stood in the moonlight. A girl in a tattered white dress. Watching them. Not moving. 100 feet away. Then she smiled. The smile was too wide. It stretched across the girl's face like a tear in her skin, exposing pale teeth that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. Her dress clung to her like wet paper, translucent and torn, the fabric dripping though the air around her was bone dry. Her feet hovered just an inch above the mossy ground. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. But they all felt her looking into them. Back, Melanie hissed. Back to the trail. Don't run. Just walk. The group moved as one, slow and mechanical, pulling Rosa between them. Darren stayed behind them, the bat clenched white-knuckled in his hand. June kept her eyes on the trees, willing herself not to look back. Not to see if the girl was following. But she didn't need to look. She felt it. That pressure at the back of her skull. Like someone had reached inside her thoughts and flipped on a light. You know, the girl's voice called, echoing through the trees without volume. It was like thoughts spoken aloud, heard inside their bones. You remember what you did? Shut up, Darren muttered. Shut up, shut up. I was 10, June whispered. Tyler spun to her. What are you talking about? June faltered. That summer. The one before middle school. Me and Caleb and Rosa and a few others, we played a game. It was stupid, just this ritual we found online. Drown the Doubt, it was called. Said it would make you brave. I remember that. Rosa muttered. You said we had to pick someone. Someone who wouldn't come back. We thought it was a joke. June said, eyes wide and shimmering. We used this old doll we found in the attic. Tied it to a rock. Made up a name. Said a little chant and threw it in the lake. I swear to God, I didn't think it would do anything. But it did, Rosa said. You named her. You gave her a face. The forest closed in, the path back to the car swallowed by the shapes slipping from behind trees and stumps. Some were barefoot, some dripping. All of them had the same lifeless expression, their eyes glassy and vacant, their mouths moving faintly, as if humming to music no longer audible. Melanie backed into Darren, breathing fast. We're surrounded. Darren gritted his teeth, raising the bat. Then we break through. They're just kids. They're not real. One of the ghostly boys stepped forward. His face was missing half a jaw. Bones showed through wet, rotting skin. Melanie pulled Darren back. You sure about that? There's too many. Rosa whispered from where she sat, slumped against the tree. You can't fight her. You can only give her what she wants. And what is that? June snapped. Revenge? No, Rosa said, blinking slowly. Company. The girl on the lake had reached the shore now. She stepped onto land without leaving so much as a footprint. As she drew closer, the temperature dropped. Not wind, just the kind of cold that seeped into the marrow, into the brain. The leaves wilted where she passed. She stopped a few feet away. Up close, her face was a collage of familiarity. A patchwork of features, eyes like Rosa's, cheekbones like June's, lips that looked like a younger Melanie's. Her body was thin but tall, too tall, like someone had stretched a child's form into adolescence. Why? June asked, her voice small. Why us? The girl tilted her head. Her eyes locked on June's, and for a second, just one, June saw something human flicker in the lake girl's expression. Loneliness. Deep. Ageless. Unfillable. You made me, she said. Her voice was no longer echoing. It was soft now, close, like breath on skin. You named me. You gave me life. We didn't mean to, June said, stepping forward despite every instinct. We didn't understand. But I do, the girl replied. I understand you. I know what you're afraid of. What you left behind. Behind June, Rosa whimpered. Don't listen. If you look at her too long, she gets in. But it was already too late. Because the girl in white stepped forward, and her body shifted. Her face melted, reformed. Now she wore June's face. A younger version. Tears streaked down its cheeks. Help me. The Mary June whispered. You promised you wouldn't let me go alone. June staggered back. No. No, that wasn't real. I imagined you. You're not real. You let me sink. June shook her head violently, pressing her hands to her ears, but the words slipped between her fingers like cold mist. You let me sink. The lake girl, no, the thing wearing June's childhood face, stepped closer. Her eyes weren't human now. They were black, lidless voids that swallowed the moonlight. It was just a doll, June whispered, backing into a tree trunk. It wasn't you. But it was her. Somehow it was. The part of June she'd buried with that stupid ritual. The fear. The pain. The guilt. And it had been festering in the depths of the lake all these years, waiting for her to come back. You gave me a name, the creature said. Say it again. June covered her mouth. Say it, the girl roared, and the woods shook with her voice. The dead children surged forward, but stopped short, forming a circle around the group. Tyler raised his arms, trembling. We can't fight this. Darren dropped the bat. No, he said slowly. But maybe we can end it. Melanie turned to him. What? The circle. The one you broke, June. How do we fix it? June was crying now, barely able to speak. It wasn't real. We made it up. We thought. But she thinks it was real, Darren said. That's what matters. Rosa sat up, rubbing her temples. The ritual. It was about courage. About giving up fear. But we gave it a name. A body. We turned fear into a person. And now she wants to be whole, Darren said. She is whole, June whispered. We made her whole. No, Rosa said, her eyes suddenly sharp. She's missing something. Otherwise she wouldn't need us. The lake girl tilted her head again. Her face had shifted again. It was now Caleb's. He looked at June with wide, desperate eyes. You never came back for me. June dropped to her knees. I'm sorry. I didn't know. I didn't mean to leave you. The thing moved closer. Say my name, it whispered again. June trembled. Is that what you want? Behind her, the trees groaned. The children closed in tighter. "Say it," the voice repeated. "Say it, and I'll take you instead." "What?" Darren grabbed June's arm. "No. You don't know what she means." June looked up at him, tears streaking her dirt-smeared face. "Yes, I do." She turned back to the girl and whispered, "Mira." The name cracked the night like thunder. The circle of dead children stopped. The wind died. The world held its breath. Then the girl smiled, and June collapsed. June's body hit the forest floor with a soft thud. She didn't cry out, didn't move. Her limbs twisted at strange angles, like the marionette strings had been snipped all at once. "June!" Melanie screamed, running to her. Darren dropped to his knees, shaking her. "No, no, come on!" June's eyes fluttered open. But they weren't her eyes. They were black, wide and bottomless. The same eyes that stared up from the lake. She sat up slowly, her spine straightening unnaturally. Her head lolled, then turned toward Rosa. "She called me home," June Mira whispered. "And now I wear her skin." Rosa shrank away, horror etched across her face. "You said you'd take her, not wear her." The girl shrugged. "She gave herself. I only accepted the gift." Melanie grabbed Darren's arm. "We have to do something. There has to be a way to pull her back." Rosa was staring at June, her expression unreadable. "You said we broke the circle. What if we finish it?" Tyler blinked. "What?" "Rituals don't just open things," Rosa said, her voice trembling with clarity. "They can close them. If we made her by giving her a name, a face, and a sacrifice, maybe we can unmake her." "Undo it?" Darren asked. "Yes. But we need all of us. That means Caleb." Melanie gestured wildly. "He's in the lake." "No," Rosa said. "He's here." They turned to look back at the lake. Caleb stood at the water's edge now, motionless, his hands hanging limp at his sides. "Caleb!" Rosa shouted. "If you're still in there, fight her!" No response. June Mira stood, her eyes gleaming. "He belongs to me." Darren stepped in front of her. "Then come and take him." Her smile dropped. For the first time, she hesitated. "You shouldn't challenge her," Rosa whispered. "If she strikes first, the circle breaks again." But Darren didn't move. He looked across the lake and locked eyes with Caleb. "You can hear me, can't you? She's not you. She's just fear in your skin. You don't have to listen to her." Caleb blinked. A flicker. Then, he stepped forward. Onto the dirt. Onto the grass. He looked down at his hands like he didn't recognize them. Then he looked up and whispered, "June?" June's face twitched. A crack ran down the center of her cheek. Not blood. Not skin. Porcelain. She shrieked. "Not June. Mira." Her form flickered like a flame in wind. Melanie gasped. "She's coming apart." Rosa grabbed Darren's hand. "Quick! Say her name, all of us. Say it and take it back." Darren shouted, "Mira!" Melanie joined him. "Mira!" Tyler, reluctantly at first. "Mira!" And Rosa, louder than all of them. "Mira!" June fell to her knees, clutching her skull. Her face cracked wider. Beneath it, for a brief second, they saw nothing. A hollow mask breaking. Then, light. Blinding. And silence. The silence roared. It wasn't the absence of sound. It was the kind of silence that filled your lungs and pressed into your skull, the kind that made your heartbeat sound like a drum. The woods stilled. The air stopped moving. Even the lake froze, literally. A skin of ice spread across its surface like veins of white lightning, webbing out from the center where Mira had stood. Then the light dimmed. June gasped, collapsing onto her side, her face streaked with sweat and tears. The black had left her eyes. Her breathing was shallow, but real. "She's gone," June whispered. Rosa knelt beside her. "Can you feel her?" "No. Just echoes." The children, the ghostly figures surrounding them, had begun to fade. Their pale bodies flickered, turned translucent, then melted like mist in morning light. One by one, they disappeared. Except for Caleb. He stood still, watching them all, eyes wide with something unreadable. Melanie stepped toward him. "Caleb? Are you okay?" He looked down at his hands again. I think so. But I remember everything." Darren approached carefully. "Can you come with us? Do you think you're free?" Caleb smiled faintly. "I think I'm me again." Behind them, the ice on the lake cracked. All heads turned. A single, jagged line split the frozen surface, traveling from the far side of the lake to the shore. Then another. And another. The ice fractured, then crumbled inward, like a drained sinkhole. The lake collapsed into itself, swirling, draining into a yawning chasm in its center. A vortex. Melanie grabbed June's hand. "What's happening now?" "She's pulling it back," June murmured, taking her world with her. They watched as the lake sank away, the water vanishing into the dark, the trees groaning and leaning inward. The air was filled with the low hum of something old, and ancient, and finished. Then quiet. The lake was gone. What remained was a wide, dry basin of cracked mud and black stone. At the center, a hole. Bottomless. Rosa stepped to the edge, her face pale in the moonlight. "She's really gone." Melanie reached out to her, but Rosa took another step forward. "She was just a girl," Rosa said softly. "We made her into a monster. And we ended her," Darren said. "That has to count for something." Rosa looked over her shoulder at him. "Does it? Or did we just bury her again, deeper this time?" No one answered. In the trees, an owl called. A breeze moved through the clearing. Life, slowly, began to return. They walked back to the car in silence, the trail somehow shorter now, as if the forest had uncoiled its grip. The moon hung high overhead, indifferent and cold, and no one dared to speak until the headlights of Darren's beat-up Jeep came into view. "Keys," Tyler said, holding out his hand. Darren tossed them without a word. They loaded into the vehicle quietly. Rosa and June in the back, Melanie and Caleb in the middle, Darren riding shotgun while Tyler drove. No music. Just the rumble of tires on dirt, the chirp of insects slowly returning to the world around them. About 10 minutes into the ride, Melanie finally spoke. "What do we tell people?" No one answered right away. "About Rosa and Caleb going missing. About June collapsing. About the lake being—" She paused, then said it plainly. "Gone." Tyler kept his eyes on the road. "We don't." "That's not an answer. It's the only one that won't get us locked up or studied," Darren muttered. "You think anyone's gonna believe we accidentally created a lake ghost and then banished it with a chant?" June shifted in the back seat. Her voice was hoarse. "They'll believe the part where we lost someone." Rosa reached out, touched her hand. "But we didn't. Not forever." Caleb stared out the window. "I don't remember all of it. Just flashes. Darkness." Her voice. "My own thoughts screaming to get out." "You're safe now," Melanie said. "I don't think she's gone," he murmured. Everyone stiffened. "She left," Caleb continued. "But not everything goes with you when you leave a place. Some things stay behind." June's hand found her necklace, fingers tightening around the chain. "She'll never be whole again." "No," Rosa said quietly, looking out the window. "But neither will we." They reached the edge of town. Dagger's Edge looked just as it always had, Sleepy, small, bathed in yellow-orange porch lights and the slow, blinking rhythm of traffic lights no one obeyed after midnight. Normal. But the six of them knew better. Nothing would ever be normal again. They didn't hang out much after that. A few weeks passed, and the story went around town that Caleb and Rosa had gotten lost during a midnight swim and were found a day later, dazed and dehydrated but otherwise unharmed. No one asked too many questions. Small towns had a way of burying the strange, just like the lake had. Darren left for college upstate that fall. Tyler took a job at the gas station and never talked about that night again. Melanie went quiet, the kind of quiet that builds walls you can't climb back over. Rosa stopped going near the woods altogether. And June? She stayed. The summer ended. The wind turned dry and sharp, rustling through trees that had once whispered secrets to her, and now only murmured warnings. June walked the forest paths sometimes, alone, tracing the edges of where the lake had once been. It was just dirt now, cracked and dry, as if water had never touched it. But sometimes, at dusk, the air changed. A chill would roll in from the center of that dry basin. Birds would fall silent. And if June stood very still, she could almost hear it, that lullaby, drifting faint and soft across the dust. The name still lived in her head. Mira. Not a ghost. Not a girl. Something older that had worn their fears like a costume. She reached the edge of the dry lake one evening, the sun bleeding red across the horizon. And there, in the center of the basin, stood a single object. A doll. Sodden, eyeless, its head tilted to the side. It hadn't been there before. June stared at it for a long time, her pulse slow but heavy. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She simply knelt, reached into the dirt, and buried it with her bare hands. The sun dipped beneath the trees. And when she looked up again, the lake was back.